Welcome, everyone. Uh, Welcome to today's ESP Professional Development webinar. Thank you for joining us. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Epsilon Sigma Phi Professional Development webinar. My name is Tyrone Gentry, and I serve as the chair of the Professional Development Committee. Please take a moment and drop your name and your institution in the chat box so that we can have a record of who's with us today. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the archives on the National Association website with our other webinars that are accessible to all of our members. Please keep in mind that all ESP members are welcome to submit webinar proposals, including lifetime members. The RFP is currently open for this year's national conference proposals and webinar proposals. They're open simultaneously. The deadline to apply for these is February the 15th, so just shy of a month. The webinar committee is charged with a task of providing 8 to 9 webinars per year, and we greatly appreciate our volunteers for suggestions and submissions on topics that are nationally peer-reviewed presentations. All the participants are in mute during the presentation, but however, if you'd like to leave us a question while it's on your mind, you can drop that in the chat box. There'll be a few minutes at the end of the webinar for the presenters to answer some questions. Following the webinar, you will receive an email with a link to a very brief evaluation survey. We do hope you take the time to complete the survey and provide feedback to our presenters and the webinar committee. Thank you again for joining us today. Today's webinar is titled Beating the Winter Blues, and it is a pleasure to welcome our Ohio team from the Alpha Eta Chapter, Jeannie Lobb and Shannon Carter.
Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. It's been fun watching you share where you're from, coming in through the chat, and lots of Midwesterners it looks like, which is what we might anticipate with this topic. We are in the Midwest ourselves in the North Central region. But wherever you are, we're glad you're here, and I think this information will be interesting, even if you are fortunate enough to work in the warm, sunny southern part of our country. Shannon actually developed this presentation a few years ago. It was actually January 2018. She had a program for a site in her county and put this topic together and reached out to me and said, hey, I have a presentation this week. Can you review this for me? And I thought, this is fantastic. Can I use it too? So we kind of ran with it from there. And since then, we have presented this topic to over 1,400 individuals. I would say a lot of those people were at our own university, the Ohio State University. We had the opportunity to present to faculty and staff through our university's wellness program. We did that virtually, and they did an evaluation for us. So we got some really nice data out of that. Over 90% of those who completed an evaluation, which was about 1,200 people, said they were planning to use this content, and about 94% indicated they could use information to cope with current circumstances, which was, remember, this was virtual. It was still during COVID time when there were a lot of current circumstances that were unprecedented. And we realized during that time that, you know, beating the pandemic blues was very similar to beating the winter blues. So a lot of this content is stuff that we as health educators already teach. It's just packaged in a little bit different way, and it tends to, you know, kind of be more relevant or attract different folks this time of year. We are over halfway through January now, so we're at a time in the year when the holiday season is over. There are good and bad things about that. But for some of us, it means that we are in this gray season without all the lights and excitement of the holidays anymore, which can be challenging. So that's kind of the reason for the timing. We typically do give this presentation in January. And so that's kind of the context. So what we're going to do today is just take you through the presentation so you can see what's here, and hopefully it'll be of use to you both personally and professionally. You might find some things that you might want to try yourself, as well as some things you might want to share with the clientele in your community. So this presentation goes through symptoms of the winter blues, and then we move into how to take care of ourselves in the winter time. And we encourage participants to set a SMART goal for winter wellness at the end as we wrap up. So what we want to do as we get started here is invite you to provide us with some feedback. We are using Mentimeter to create a word cloud here. Share with us how winter makes you feel. So if you have a smartphone, you can take out your cell phone and scan that QR code. Shannon, is there a link they could use if they're on their computer? Yeah.
Yes, if you prefer, or whether you're using your phone or your computer, you can join at menti.com, and I will, there's a code then that will come with that, but I'll give you a minute to do the menti.com. We'll leave the QR code up there for another little bit, but then there's an 8-digit code you'll need.
Once you get to that site, you'll be prompted to respond to the question, how does winter make you feel? And it's just an open text box, so you can type in up to 2 words or phrases.
So hopefully you're seeing that word cloud kind of form before you. And the code, if you're typing this in, is at the top. It's 8657-4395. So if you're typing that in, you'll see that code at the top of our screen.
You'll see this updates in real time as more responses come in. And the bigger words are the ones that are repeated. So the more often something is typed in, the bigger that word becomes.
I like crisp. It's a fun descriptor.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's the same as crispy. I like ready for spring too. That's a good one.
Yeah. I always celebrate that winter solstice now, knowing that the days are getting longer from that point on. So
I paid attention to that date a lot more this year than I normally do. So, all right. Well, that's just about everybody. Maybe just a couple more.
That's a good perspective, Sandra, in the chat. Every season has its positives and negatives. That is true. And we often focus on the negatives this time of year. But hopefully that is one takeaway. Today you can look at winter with a new perspective. Yeah, so what we're seeing, tired, unmotivated, cold. I like cozy. That's a new one for me. But the tired, unmotivated, those are pretty typical responses when we do this exercise with people.
You just gotta learn to go for that.
In fact, if we want to go back to the slides, we have a screenshot of another word cloud we've done in the past with a different group, and you'll see.
I think I hid that one from today.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
that's okay. That's all right. Well, anyway, these are pretty typical responses. The tired and the fatigued, unmotivated, sluggish. Those are all pretty typical responses. So first of all, know that you're not alone in feeling this way. Winter just has that effect on us. And in fact, there are changes to our brain chemistry this time of year that help produce that effect. So with the colder temperatures, we may feel a little bit slower. You feel that kind of urge to hibernate, want to stay inside. But the big one is the shorter days, those fewer hours of daylight. Those can increase melatonin, which is that hormone you've probably heard of that is associated with our sleep cycle. So with the fewer hours of daylight, we often do feel a little bit more sleepy or fatigued or sluggish. And we also, at the same time, have a decrease in serotonin, which is that feel-good hormone. So these winter blues can be explained in part, at least, by those changes to our brain chemistry, and they're pretty common and normal. So if we look at some of these symptoms, the common symptoms of the winter blues are feeling sluggish and sleepy, maybe changes in appetite. That could be an increased or decreased appetite. Oftentimes this time of year, we are craving all the carbohydrates, right? We're wanting to just kind of hibernate, and so that can be a challenge. Feeling more depressed or sad, or feeling less social. I use that word wanting to hibernate, which to me kind of encompasses these different symptoms. Now, we always do when we share this presentation, let people know about seasonal affective disorder. I think it's important to be aware of this condition if you've not heard of it. There is a type of depression called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, as it's commonly known, which is a type of depression that's related to the change in seasons. So it's very common for us to experience the winter blues. For some people, those changes to brain chemistry can be significant enough to result in a clinical diagnosable type of depression. And depression is typically, defined as a period of 2 or more weeks where you're having symptoms significant enough to interfere with your daily activities. So this type of depression, SAD, it impacts about 6% of Americans each year, but that does vary quite a bit based on geography. So those who live farther from the equator experience this much more frequently than those who live in warmer climates. For example, only 1% of those who live in Florida experience SAD, whereas up to 9% of those who live in New England or Alaska have this condition. And of course, if you have a family history of depression or another mental health disorder, you may be more at risk. It does tend to be diagnosed more often in women as compared to men, as well as more often in younger adults compared to older adults. We don't know the reasoning for that, but those are just some of the statistics around it. So some of the symptoms, again, these are significant enough to interfere with your daily life. So we like to share this in case you suspect that someone you know, yourself or a loved one, may be may be experiencing this condition, changes in appetite or weight. So not just craving all the carbohydrates, but maybe, overeating, undereating to the point that it's really causing a significant change in weight. Changes in sleep patterns, whether that be sleeping all the time or having insomnia, fatigue and decreased energy to the point where you just can't get out of bed, can't function, inability to concentrate, irritability, that social withdrawal, and those feelings of sadness, anxiety, or hopelessness. If you or a loved one, if you suspect that this may be at play, please do seek out the help of a health professional, because there are a lot of things we can do to cope with the winter blues, as we're going to spend the rest of our time today talking about. But sometimes we do need a little bit of extra help. And so one of the best things you can do for yourself or a loved one is seek that extra help when it is needed. So I'm going to turn it over to Shannon now to talk about some of those ways we can beat the winter blues.
Thanks, Jenny. And mostly we want folks to know that you are not alone. This does affect a lot of people. And even if you don't have those symptoms to the extent of maybe sad, a lot of us, we just feel those winter blues. So there's a lot that is out of our control. We can't do a whole lot about the temperature outside or the amount of daylight hours, but there's a lot that we can do to take care of ourselves and to take care of others as well. And so we're going to talk about some strategies that we can use to lift our mood, take care of our mind and body, even in the winter. And we like to use quotes. This one's from Paul Thoreau, who says, "Winter is a season of recovery and preparation." So perhaps you can use this time in winter for stillness and reflection and just that pause that we sometimes need, even in the midst of a busy season. We know in extension, there's hardly ever a downtime. So sometimes we have to carve that out. And then part of that is learning to be still. So taking the time and then being comfortable with being still. Sometimes we get used to the busy to the point where that feels like what we should be busy all the time. So learning to keep calm and stay calm, learn what triggers your calming cycle for yourself. I liked what someone said on how winter makes them feel is cozy. And while I love like looking at the snow, I don't like being cold. And so for me, it's an opportunity to get my favorite fuzzy blanket, my cup of hot tea, maybe turn on the fireplace. And so, yeah, I like to think of it as cozy, and those things are good things to help me calm down as well. Being mindful in the moment. We spend a lot of our time kind of worrying about something that's coming up or maybe regretting something from the past. But the best way to enjoy that moment is just to just be mindful, be aware, take it in, and to be present. That's a favorite that we can do to ourselves. Another thing we can do, and sometimes I need reminded of this, is to do one thing at a time. Just do one thing at a time whenever possible. Sometimes we feel like we have lots of things going, maybe several things open on our computers, lots of things we're working on, and we like to think that we're multitasking, but really what we're doing is quickly switching our attention from one activity to another. And that gets tiring after a while. So give yourselves a brain break and just do that one thing, especially on days when I feel overwhelmed and a little scattered. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do one thing. And sometimes it helps to close other things up on my desk, close up other applications, and then just do that one thing. Taking time away from technology. I know that's a little ironic since we're doing this via technology, but every day, make sure you have some time that's just unplugged, not looking at a screen, and then, maybe once a week or on a periodical, regular basis, take an extended time away from technology, because it's very difficult to deal with the constant notifications that we get, even if it's something that you're excited to get, whether it's a social media response or an email you've been waiting for, it sends this pleasurable signal to our brain when we get a message. And sometimes that can be almost addicting, and checking our phones frequently. So taking a break from that technology is important. Sometimes I think our phones contribute to our anxiety a little bit. And even taking a break from news and social media, constantly hearing the news, and we know it's not always positive things, that can wear on you after a while. Well, Lady Bird Johnson shares, when I no longer thrill to the first snow of the season, I'll know I'm growing old. Well, remember what that snow was like when you were a child? Did you get excited for a snow and a snow day? Recall that wonder and excitement, just to give you a fresh perspective on that beauty and sparkle of snow, even if you maybe aren't running out in it to make a snow angel or build a snowman. Just learn to look at it a little bit differently. And then another thing that winter is a great time to do is to be creative. You can distract yourself from the blahs of winter by taking up a new hobby or something that you find purpose in, something that adds joy to your life. Well, we found that seeking new experiences can actually transform us to see the world or our situation with new eyes, maybe even lead to a new purpose. And it kind of lights up different areas of the brain when we're creative
Yep, I
and
went home
seeking
today.
something new.
Yep.
So otherwise, you can maybe find or engage in a new hobby. You could try journaling if that's something that you've not done before. And along with journaling, one thing that's really neat is to maybe keep a gratitude journal or write a note of gratitude. And then if you have someone that you can share that gratitude with, sharing that note with them, then you've uplifted yourself and them as well. So just looking at some of those different things that you can do to help boost your mood a little bit, and creativity is one of those.
Another thing we want to make sure we're doing this time of year is practice self-care. Take care of ourselves. And oftentimes, we might think of self-care as indulgent. Maybe, I don't know what comes to mind when you hear self-care. If it's something like, a day at the spa or a nice long bubble bath, those things can be nice, but self-care is so much more than that. Just taking time to meet our basic needs, mentally and physically. So one of the best things we can do for ourselves always, but in the winter time, is to fuel our bodies with nutritious foods, eating healthy. I mentioned one of the symptoms of the winter blues might be craving all the carbohydrates or those rich foods, and those might feel really nice in the immediate term if you have a sweet tooth. But what happens when we are indulging those cravings is, we eat something, it tastes really good, might feel good in the immediate term, but then we have that high and then that crash and then the next craving, and you get caught in that cycle. So by fueling your body first with those nutritious foods from the basic food groups, fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, and so forth, we're gonna feel a lot better and be a lot healthier overall. In addition to that, making sure we're getting enough sleep. So adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And so making sure you're getting enough rest can really go a long way for both your physical and mental health. And finding ways to cope with stress. We all have stress in our lives, but finding those ways we can relax and reduce stress is an aspect of self-care as well. I just recently read a research study, 7 self-care habits to reduce depression. And so this was a study of nearly 300,000 people. And what they found was that people who maintained at least 5 of these habits cut their risk of depression by 57%. And these are pretty basic. So we see, going through the list here, we see getting enough sleep, which I just talked about, exercising regularly, which we'll cover in a moment, maintaining a healthy eating pattern. And they specifically called out in this study the MIND diet or the Mediterranean diet. If you've not heard of the MIND diet, it's an acronym. It stands for the Mediterranean Intervention to prevent neurological delay. So it's a long one, but essentially it's an eating pattern that has been designed to help promote brain health. And so these eating patterns, they're more sustainable. They incorporate the major food groups. They're more eating patterns versus what I, as a dietitian, refer to as the diets, you know, the ones that come and go, whatever the next fad is. These are healthy eating patterns that can be sustained over a lifetime. The fourth one is limiting alcohol consumption. The fifth one is choosing not to smoke or stop smoking if you are a smoker. The sixth is limiting sedentary time and screen time. And I like to point out that, you know, this is separate from number 2. So getting enough exercise is important, but then choosing not to be sedentary is also important. These are separate risk factors. So if you're someone who, you know, spends an hour at the gym in the morning and then sits all day, well, you're exercising regularly, but you're still living a sedentary lifestyle. So those are both important, breaking up your sedentary time and taking breaks from the screen, as Shannon mentioned. And then finally, cultivating friendships and social connection, which we'll also touch on here. So a nice summary article of this is linked if you are interested in referencing this study yourself. But I thought, how awesome is that just by taking care of ourselves in these ways that we've mentioned and we encourage our clientele to do can have such an impact on both our physical health and our mental health. So getting outside, in the winter, this is important because I mentioned at the beginning that our melatonin increases with the shorter hours of daylight. So if you're able to get outside during the day, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, that can help offset that decline in melatonin we experience this time of year. Weather permitting, you could get out and take a walk. You know, here in Ohio, and I imagine in other parts of the country, haven't been so fortunate these past couple weeks. It was way too cold last week to go out for a walk. And this week, it's just rain, and more rain. But weather permitting, if you can get out for a walk, that's a great habit to start or continue. Spending time in nature, whether it, you know, just be looking out the window if you can't actually get outside, or standing on a porch step or whatever it may be. We have a wonderful metro park system in Central Ohio, and so my family, we're working our way through Metro Park Passport, which what that means is from December through February. So we need to get 7 stamps on our passport, visit 7 of, I think there are maybe 18 or 19 parks. So that's been a little fun thing we've been doing as a family to get outside. Gives us something to do on the weekend, maybe go explore a new place. So check out the parks in your area if that's an option. If you have space for a fire, it can be really nice this time of year to have that fire or look up at the stars if you live in a place where that's a possibility. So a quote here from Aristotle: to appreciate the beauty of the snowflake, it's sometimes necessary to stand out in the cold. Takes a little extra motivation to get outdoors this time of year, but it can be worthwhile as long as it's not too icy or dangerously cold to be out there. And there are other ways you can get outside or appreciate nature. Maybe inviting the birds into your yard, or taking up bird watching as a hobby. That's been growing in popularity, and that's a nice thing you could do in the winter as a mindfulness practice. Getting that vitamin N, that dose of nature, which is a whole presentation in itself, but there's more and more research suggesting that we need nature for our health. So that's one way to achieve that. And there are lots of seasonal things outdoors that are unique to this time of year. So if you need more ideas, you might look for places in your community where you could go out and see the lights. A lot of those are specific to the holidays, but one advantage of this time of year is that because it gets dark so early, we can go out and enjoy the lights in the evening. There's a community near me that has an ice skating rink that's open on the weekends. Through, I think, March, as long as they say weather permitting, which is very subjective. But my family actually went there back in December. So, going out and ice skating is an idea. Or looking for other outdoor activities that might be specific to your community or the parks around you. I love this quote. It's one of my favorite ones about winter. If you choose not to find joy in the snow, you'll have less joy in your life, but the same amount of snow. So whether you get outside or not, we do want to find ways to stay physically active this time of year. That was one of those healthy habits on that list that I shared. And we know that regular exercise or physical activity has so many benefits for both the brain and the body, for our physical and mental health. So exercise is, structured, planned activity, whereas physical activity is anything that you're doing to get your body moving, to get your heart rate up a little bit. Of course, the physical activity guidelines, as I'm sure many of you know, are 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity physical activity. And that's what's been determined to be the minimum amount for those health benefits. I always encourage folks to figure out what you enjoy doing so that you're going to look forward to that activity, and it's not just something you have to do. If you think of it as work and even calling it working out, then it's not going to be as enjoyable as an activity that you look forward to. So that might be walking or running or going to the gym for a strength training session or circuit training. It might be water aerobics, dance class, Tai Chi, yoga, whatever it is that, gets you moving and that you can actually look forward to, go for it. It's going to be much more sustainable. You're going to keep with it if it's something that you enjoy. And if you need a little bit of motivation, then maybe a group fitness class where it's a social activity, or finding a walking partner is the right thing to keep you moving and motivated this season.
We want to encourage you to connect with others. We have it's kind of the opposite of that idea of hibernating. That's usually an isolated thing, and we want to get folks connected. So sometimes it takes a little effort, but make a plan, make a date with a friend to socialize. It may be a family that you haven't seen in a while. But I often find that just having something to look forward to on my calendar really kind of helps me get through maybe the doldrums of a week or a gray day. One fun way to do that is to volunteer. Kind of funny, my son got us into this just a couple weeks ago. He was volunteering at a food pantry sort where they get all their sorted items that have been donated, and they sort them into bins so that when they have a giveaway, they're ready to go. Well, he had something come up, but had already volunteered 3 from our family. So my daughter and husband and I went, and they asked where he was, and I said, well, he had to go volunteer somewhere else. But anyway, it was fun. He got us into it, and we could see that there was a group there that normally does this together, and they had almost formed a community that was really neat. Learn to play and laugh, and do something that's really fun, and thinking about when's the last time that you had a really good laugh, and maybe you have that friend that you can just pick up where you left off with and have that kind of laughter, and that counts as exercise. I'm just saying 20 seconds of that really good belly laughter, it's the cardiovascular equivalent to 3 minutes of strenuous rowing. Laughing sounds a lot more fun. And like Jenny had mentioned earlier, we do want to encourage you to seek help when it's needed. If your stress or depression is persisting, you can talk with a mental health professional, talk with a physician, and just see if there's something that maybe you might be able to tweak or do a little bit differently to help you through that. If you have access to employee assistance, we have that here with our Ohio State University. I'm sure all the universities have something similar. And we often get questions about light therapy boxes and maybe vitamin D or other supplements or medication. And those may be treatment options. We just recommend talking with your doctor about those. So that could be something else that just could add to maybe your overall strategies that you're using to beat the winter blues. Well, we want to hear from you of what your favorite thing to do in winter is. And this could be an outdoor activity, or maybe it's something that you look forward to doing. I think Ty mentioned woodworking project when we were getting logged on. Just something that you enjoy doing. If you want to put some ideas in the chat, you're welcome to. And we'll start to see those come through. It was neat to see where everyone was coming in from around the country, and it seems like, yeah, a lot in the Midwest. Snowboarding, stargazing, reading while having the fireplace on. Oh yeah, that just like get all the things about you. Puzzles, new recipes. I think it might be National Soup Month, someone said. Making cards, coloring. In Utah, playing in the snow like a kid. Love it. Puzzles and looking at the stars from the hot tub. Now that is nice. I like it. Scrapbooking, walking the dogs. They will kind of make you go outside. Knitting, movies. Yeah, so there's definitely some seasonal things that kind of come with the winter. And if you can have a list of those to keep you going and find something to help you kind of, whether it's relax or get motivated or have fun. I saw all of those things encompassed in the list that folks made there when they shared. So feel free to grab some of those from the chat and adopt those as some things to try. Well, we'd like to use this last bit here and a little bit of a meditation, if you'll take some time and indulge us with this. So meditation can be a way to help calm the mind, and some people think, oh, it makes me sleepy. Well, it can have multiple effects. It might just help you find that little bit of calm that you need to kind of shut out some of the swirling thoughts that we have in our minds. And then from that, it can help re-energize and give you better focus then moving forward. So first of all, if you can find a quiet spot, and hopefully your office is, or wherever you're watching this from, is somewhat quiet. And this is actually a YouTube, but it's just a swirling snow globe. And you can also just imagine a snow globe as if you shake it up. Imagine your worries are like snowflakes swirling around in a snow globe that's been shaken hard. So with this, breathe slowly and deeply. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose if you can. And exhale through your mouth. And visualize your negative feelings and your stress falling, just like the snowflakes. Continue deep, cleansing breaths as your mind begins to settle and snowflakes rest on the ground. And continue breathing at your own pace, but maybe a little slower and a little more deeply than what you were. And then think about spending another mindful minute bringing some positive, calm feelings. And thinking how you can bring those positive yet calm feelings with you to whatever else you have to do today, even if it's during some of those more stressful moments. So I know a lot of times our days can feel like we are in a snow globe shaken up, but even snow globes will calm after a while. We want to encourage you to set a goal for winter wellness, and those are best in small changes. You know, we shared a lot of ideas, participants shared a lot of ideas in chat, even if you can just pick one or two of those things. So we encourage participants to set what's called a SMART goal. I'm sure many of you teach this as well. And SMART standing for the S in that is specific, something that you can clearly name. It's also measurable. You'll know for sure when you've achieved that goal. So maybe it's going for a walk at lunch, a 10-minute walk 2 times a week. That would be something that's measurable. Attainable and achievable, something that's within reach and it's relevant to make sure that it fits your needs as well. Oops. And it's also time bound, that you have a specific, target date. So maybe it's by the end of this winter season, you'll have put together that puzzle or finished, some project. But go ahead and, jot down whatever that might be for you, that 1 or 2 small change that you can make to take good care of yourself this winter. And we'll summarize what some of those strategies were. And that's taking time to be still, finding ways to create, getting outside, getting moving, whether it's exercise or some form of physical activity, connecting with others, and seeking help when it's needed. We want to leave you with this encouraging thought that every winter has its spring. So winter doesn't last forever, even in the Midwest, even in the northern states where I know it gets hit the hardest. Spring is coming. And until then, we hope you can use these tips to take care of yourself and to live healthy and well. We would appreciate your feedback. So if you have that phone handy and want to answer these quickly on your phone, there's the QR code for that. Or you can visit go.osu.edu/ESP webinar eval and complete that evaluation for us. We really would appreciate that. And we also want to open it up to any questions you may have. You're welcome to unmute and ask those or put those in the chat. And you'll see that Jenny also put the link to that evaluation in the chat if that's easier to grab and complete that way on the computer.
You mentioned that a lot of us were from the Midwest. And what I love about being in the Midwest is that we have essentially 4 seasons and we get to change our wardrobe each season. So it's like getting new clothes every 3 or 4 months.
I love that thought. I have often said I love, yeah, each season has its ups and downs, but I love having all 4. I think I'd get kind of bored, but I never really thought about the clothes before. Thank you, Sandra.
You bet.
Well, if any of you are interested and would like to teach this program in your own program calendar, please let us know, contact us, and we'll be happy to share this with you. But we hope that you could take a few things away from this personally so that it doesn't have to all be about work. That's what ESP is about too, is developing the professional. So.
Thank you, Jeannie and Shannon. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It is so timely, things that we can use in our lives and use with our friends and our family and our coworkers and our clientele. Thank you for sharing with us. Just a few reminders as we close. The evaluation is in the chat link. Our next webinar will be scheduled or is scheduled for February the 28th. And the topic of that one is developing collaborative partnerships with chambers of commerce. And I'm almost sure that the registration is already open for that one as well. If not, it will be coming out shortly though, but we hope you'll take time to look at that one as well and consider joining us. Don't forget, if you're interested in presenting a webinar in the coming future or presenting a presentation at our national conference, those RFPs are currently open. And the deadline to submit those submissions is February the 15th. So I hope everyone is staying warm, staying dry, and will have a smooth and easy week. Thank you for joining us today.
Bye, everyone.